Hello, hi and welcome to the Conscious Earth. I'm Sabine, and this is part 2 of the climate change man-made or not. And the subtitle is The Human Footprint. Yesterday we were talking about the natural cycle of the climate change, how it is going over millions of years and thousands of years of cycles. So today it's about the human footprint. So, from the natural Earth climate cycle, taking place over thousands of years, a key fact from part 1, the natural greenhouse effect makes life on Earth possible. For part 2 now, where do humans fit into the bigger picture? How to separate the effect what nature is doing and what's happening now. Now, looking at scientific evidence, there are 3 pieces of evidence for the enhanced greenhouse effect: the speed of temperature change and the specific chemical fingerprint where the extra carbon comes from. Now, the enhanced greenhouse effect, natural greenhouse effect, we compared to a blanket around Earth that makes life possible. So science is straightforward physics and discovered in the 1800s by Eunice Foote and John Tyndall and a few others, that there are certain gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor in the atmosphere have a molecular structure that absorb heat instead of reflecting it back into space. So yes, and with the Industrial Revolution about 150 years ago, it wasn't a new process with the global warming. However, the speed is the difference in the total. So it's altering the thickness of the blanket with the enhanced greenhouse effect. So burning coal, oil and gas to power factories, transport and homes has a massive impact on the blanket. And we release trapped carbon back into the atmosphere through all these processes. And before the Industrial Revolution, it was consistent 208 parts per million for thousands of years, and now it's over 420 parts per million in only 150 years. So what does that tell us? It certainly is speeding up, and it's definitely to do with our carbon footprint. We increased the CO2 by roughly 50% in that 150 years. The speed of the change is also massively increasing. Haven't the CO2 levels been higher before? Oh yes, they have. However, it is a long cycle. Some of them hundreds of thousands of years, and others lesser. It's the speed it's happening in. So when Earth moved out of Ice Age due to natural shifts in orbits, like I explained yesterday with the wobble and so on, and the time range between 5,000 and 10,000 years is in the natural cycle, giving the ecosystem time to adapt and life to evolve or migrate to different spaces. So what's happening now in 150 years is to do 10 to 20 times faster than in the natural cycle. And the smoking gun of that all is called a carbon isotope not sure if I pronounced that correct. Surely correct me if I don't pronounce that correct. I'm not a chemist, so as I pronounce it is isotopes. That's how I would pronounce this anyway. So what do we know about this? Hang on. So how do we know where the extra CO2 is coming from? From us and not just from nature? That's the question. So science doesn't rely on guesswork, it relies on chemistry. As carbon has different varieties called isotopes, as mentioned earlier. So there's carbon-12, is lightweight carbon living in plants, which they prefer to absorb through a process called photosynthesis, which I learned, sorry about that, that's my cat, one of my cats, which I learned in biology in school. Obviously that's the process which produces oxygen. That's why they're so vital for us, the trees. And yeah, that's carbon-12. Carbon-13 is heavier and common in volcanoes emissions and ocean releases, so that's more the natural stuff. Then there is carbon-14, which is radioactive, and the decay of that takes thousands of years. So as we use fossil fuels, which is made of ancient plants buried millions of years ago, their carbon-14 has decayed completely and they are packed with carbon-12. So when scientists measure carbon in the atmosphere, they see two chemical clues. Excuse me. The ratio of the carbon-13 to 12 is falling. It means the atmosphere gets flooded with plant-based carbon-12. Concentration of carbon-14 is declining, showing this carbon is ancient and not from recent natural sources. In short, the atmosphere has the exact chemical fingerprint of burnt fossil fuels, which obviously is what humans use to power industrial cars, all these kind of things, the heating in our homes, we're using it for electricity, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, this is all what we do in the last 150 years is literally this little minx tries to get my attention. So putting the pieces together, the basic physics, the heat-trapping gas is well established in the atmosphere, in the blanket. The CO2 has risen by 50% in 150 years. The speed of temperature accelerated compared to natural shifts, which takes longer. Isotope testing confirms extra carbon comes from burning fossil fuels. Realizing human impact does not mean we ignore natural cycle. It's just realizing human activity is acting as an accelerator of the natural cycle. So what usually takes thousands and thousands of years, if not millions, we accelerated that in 150 years, which is massive. And it's down to us now to see that we can change that. So in part 3, I will wrap up that by cutting through the noise about common myths, separating weather from climate, looking at practical steps to moving forward, and hopefully finding some really important solutions so that our kids today not have to clear up and clean up our mess and have still this beautiful planet to live on. And I sincerely hope that we are on the change and emerge into something new and something better for everyone. This planet is a gift to us. This is not belonging to us. We are allowed to live here. And I really feel this in my bones that we need to just clear up our own mess. And there are other ways. Obviously, it's a lot about it's money making. And yeah, so I will see you soon, and I hope this helped. Sorry about my stammering and the interference of my little cat. Have a good day. See you soon.